Welcome to CleanStart's Perspective. I'm Thomas Hall, the Executive Director of CleanStart, and you're here as part of our web series where we talk about opportunities and events around the energy transition and entrepreneurship. First off, I'd like to say the CleanStart Perspectives are supported by SMUD, our regional utility, which has a zero total emissions by 2030 goal, one of the most ambitious ones in the country and one of the first ones to announce it. Also, Chico Start, part of the Northern California iHub, Fresno State, which is part of a Fresno region iHub, and also part of the CEC's innovation clusters, which supports us through the Wet Center. Additionally, we have service providers such as Witten Law, which can help you with your startup legal needs, Moss Adams, which just recently got acquired, so eventually we'll have to update that logo, but they can help you with setting up your books and tables and everything. And then River City Bank, one of the leading financiers of clean energy projects in California. And with that, I would like to welcome a familiar guest around the startup ecosystem, someone who's been really pushing, Sacramento forward as a hub of not just, your kind of standard business, but really innovative business and entrepreneurship, bringing a lot of tools and resources to help companies grow. And that is Cameron Law, Executive Director of the Carlsen Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Sac State. If you ever get a chance, go to one of the not hackathons, but startup weekends they have. They put on a great one there. They also have a web series called Entrepreneurship Toolkit. If you're trying to figure out where to start, that's always where I point people. And he's going to talk to us today about some of the things that we have in the Sacramento ecosystem, some grant funding that's being made available, and kind of where he sees the region going in entrepreneurship as a whole. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Cameron Law to kick us off and share what things I missed on that.
Terrific. Well, I will take over the screen once you unshare yours, and love the beautiful picture there of me when I was 10 years old. So I think that was almost 10 years ago. So hopefully I still look the same, but happy to be here. Thanks, Thomas.
The glasses add a couple years.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's more of a persona thing. The glasses are just the blue light glasses. So I just want to seem smarter. I've needed to add those types of items to help me seem more smart here.
I get it. I wear punk shirts to make myself feel young.
Exactly. We all do the things to demonstrate certain things that we want to advance. So nonetheless, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Thomas, for having me. Yes, I lead the Carlsen Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneur education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to start and scale their businesses. One of the other items that we are really proud to advance is the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Growth Alliance, which is a regional initiative to really foster entrepreneurship as a driver for economic development. And so I'll be coming in presenting today on that behalf. So really wearing the hat of the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Growth Alliance, or otherwise known as SEGA, not the SEGA Genesis, but the acronym for Sacramento Entrepreneurial Growth Alliance. So with that, just if you haven't heard of SEGA at all, we're really an alliance to foster entrepreneurial development in our region, really with this vision of building an entrepreneurial community with dynamic startups, high entrepreneurship rates, widespread public awareness, and then really trying to build the capital investments in our region to advance that overall work. We have four kind of areas of focus as we think about really promoting entrepreneurship as a driver for economic development. Education really speaking to why entrepreneurship matters in building a thriving region. If you're not familiar, new startups and new business creation are actually the proven net job creator. So yes, landing big companies in a region can have a major impact in the influx of jobs, but startups and innovative startups are proven to actually create all net new jobs in thriving particular regions. Network building, so really building density around entrepreneurship and really making those connections happen for founders. So as we think about from them getting from point A to B, it's all about the ability for them to move from one resource to the next in the most efficient fashion. And so really having a dense network of support for founders is key. Advocacy, really that's more from a lens of elevating entrepreneurship and demonstrating how can we get more resources in the economic development space to go to innovation and entrepreneurship. And then lastly, data-informed storytelling, so really highlighting all the amazing work that the founders are doing and the resources that are serving them are doing and helping them get to those next levels. So things such as helping them increase revenues, access to capital, all of those great metrics. But that's all context for what SEGA is and really what our focus is. It was founded a while ago during the pandemic by the Carlsen Center Growth Factory and StartupSac, but we have over 20 partners that convene regularly to advance this overall vision to support entrepreneurship and innovation in our region. But over 2 years ago, we received a state grant from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, or otherwise known as Cal OSBA. So you might see that here throughout the slide presentation. The program is called Accelerate California Inclusive Innovation Hubs. So we were one of 13 regional Accelerate California hubs. So they're all up and down the state of California. And we received one of those designations really with the intention to foster 3 core innovation clusters. I didn't just come up with these innovation clusters. They've come across what's called our regional SED, so our comprehensive economic development strategy, which is a federal document that is provided, I think, every 5 years about what is the focus of our region. And so Greater Sacramento Economic Council, as well as Valley Vision, amongst other partners, have identified these 3 core innovation clusters. So food and ag, or otherwise known as agri-food tech. You have your health and life sciences, as well as biotech in that particular space. And then you have your clean tech and zero emission vehicle as that third anchor innovation cluster. And so in our proposal, our goal was to advance these 3 different innovation clusters, and those were identified particularly as we had a groundswell of innovative startups in that particular space, as well as regional partners and assets that were actually advancing these. So you have, future opportunities in the food and ag with the plant out in Woodland. You have Aggie Square online now at the health and life sciences. And then you have obviously the great work CleanStart's been doing for many, many years now in the clean tech space, as well as its connection to, I think what's called now Cal Epic or something of that sort. I know they used to be the California Mobility Center, but advancing that particular work and seeing a lot of the semiconductors come online there. And so one of the major gaps that we identified in the region was tied to early stage angel investment. So, we certainly have resources in the region, but a lot of that capital has not been deployed into the asset class of investing into startups. And so one of the programs that we launched is called NorCal Angel Con, which is to activate new angel investors. If you're not totally familiar with some of the life cycle, you have kind of your friends and family and fools, that's that 3F round, as well as angels, which is kind of that seed capital. This valley of death, I know, is probably much larger for some of these clean tech ventures because it's much more capital intensive than your B2B SaaS play. But we saw this as a major gap in our region, and so we thought about how we might be able to activate early stage capital. And so we looked at some best practices around the nation, and we saw Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo area, as well as San Diego had launched this particular program to activate new capital. We've had 1 year of this under the belt, and I'll share a little bit about the impact metrics in a minute or two. But basically think of this program as, on one side, activating new angels to learn about the asset class and deploy capital for kind of the first time into a scalable technology startup, while also then putting startups through an investment readiness program to help them then be prepared for that capital. And so last year in the 2024 cohort, from a startup side, we received over 85 applications. We then had our angels, which we had 15 angels, review all of those applications. They selected 19 companies to go through an investment readiness program. That was a 10-week-long program where they went through some of the foundations of building their data room, honing their pitch, filling some core gaps in their business model. They then pitched to all of those angels. 4 were selected as finalists. They did deep due diligence on that, and then they ultimately made a final investment. They invested into Arise Precision Med, which is in that kind of biotech space, which we are excited to see them invest into one of our core innovation clusters, which demonstrates, we certainly are seeing quality companies in those different clusters going forward. In terms of the program impact, so since November, we've seen over $2.6 million raised by those companies that went through the investment readiness. So those that kind of went through that were already being prepared and accessing the capitals. We activated 15 new angel investors that are now joining the Sacramento Angels, becoming LPs in different funds in our region, and then also deploying checks into startups in the ecosystem. And then the final investment came to be over $150K infused by those angels into Precision Med, which we were, or Rise Precision Med, which we're excited to see. So this year we're underway. We have activated, we have commitments up to 60K right now. We're still accepting angels. They have until June 30th. Our goal is 100K on the equity side, and then we have 25,000 in non-dilutive capital committed as well. So you get some leverage there if you're investing it, and their commitment is a $5,000 investment with a little fee for administration of the fund for the life of it. So with that brings me to why you all came here in addition. So if you are a startup, we would love for you to apply. Applications will open for the Angel Con in the July timeframe. So once we know how much capital is committed, we'll then position that to the region for all of you startups to ultimately then apply. And then the goal would be to get selected into that investment readiness. That's going to run from September 3rd to October 3rd, which I'll share a bit more about. But one of the awesome opportunities that's come through the Accelerate California Hub was Cal OSBA has received grant funding that then are administering down to the different hubs. And we've called it the Innovation Grant Competition. Basically, the funding is up to $500,000 for the next 3 years. We've taken an approach to spread that across the 3 years and run this innovation grant competition, which will coincide with the NorCal Angel Con program, which is why I had it at the top. But basically, I know this is a very busy slide. I'll be sure to share it, or if you need to take a screenshot, go for it. But really, the opportunity is we have allocated $150,000 in non-dilutive capital to this funding year one. That's going to be broken across the 3 innovation clusters that I mentioned at the top. So the agri-food tech, health and life science, and then clean tech, zero emission vehicles. So $50,000 in non-dilutive capital going to one venture in each of those innovation clusters. And so really the intentionality of this is to tackle those companies at that kind of proof of concept, research and design stage, and give that early non-dilutive capital to get some of those innovations across the that initial threshold of kind of some of that valley of death components. Additionally, we know that $50,000 can also serve as a beacon for additional investment, because obviously that's not taking any of the cap table, and so your investment would be leveraged in that fashion. And so how we're ultimately moving this forward for each of the clusters is we've identified key cluster nodes, so leaders in these different innovation clusters. So in the agri-food tech, we have AgStart. In the health and life science, we have Connect Labs. In the MedStart, and then we have CleanStart here, and now Cal Epic in the clean tech space. And so ultimately identifying these ventures, we have applications open. They're open through August 1st. So feel free to apply. And if you've already applied and want to resubmit, maybe you've got some more traction and want to change, that's awesome. And so basically what the process looks like, this beautiful visual here. So thanks for my, really good design skills here. But basically we're applications are open through August 1st. We're going to be accepting applications across all of these clusters. We then will have a cluster review based on engaging industry partners connected to the different industry nodes. The goal is for them to select up to 8 to 12 companies. Those 8 to 12 companies will then go through the investment readiness program, which will run from September 3rd to October 4th. Those will run on Wednesdays from 3 to 5 virtually. After October 4th, we will then have a pitch session. And then that, again, will be the second round of cluster review, where they'll identify 4 to 6 companies. and then that will end in a pitch day in the November timeframe. So we know kind of the targeted dates for Angel Con, which is going to be November 19th. And then the agri-food tech is going to align with a large conference in Woodland called FIRA. And then we're working with our partners to identify the specific day and time for the pitch day for the health and life science and then clean tech. But that will be where we would then award that 50K non-dilutive for each of those different clusters. So that's kind of what that looks like in terms of where we're at. We've received we've received 59 applications. This is how it's been broken down. So we have 23 in the agri-food tech, 17 health life science, and then clean tech, zero emission vehicle. And then we have got some in other spaces, but again, the intentionality is for this to go towards our main innovation clusters. So if you're in one of those other main clusters, I do apologize. You're not able to ultimately apply for that, but happy to offer support along that process. So with that, if you're on here and want to scan that QR code, that will take you to the application. It's not the most lengthy of applications, but it's not a short application either. So do set some time aside to ultimately go through that. But feel free to take a screenshot or scan that QR code, and I'll follow up with the link as well. But I will stop my share and see what tough questions Thomas has for me.
Well, first off, thank you very much for the presentation and the highlight of, I guess, kind of everything that you're working on here in the Sacramento region and, SEGA and its growth. So kind of what do you hope will come out of the grants and SEGA in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I mean, my goal with this particular competition is that one, it'd be awesome to have, some cool companies that take this early stage capital and continue to grow and become further success stories and speak to kind of how we collaborate as a region. I think even greater success is to have this be a catalyst for companies to invest into these companies. So part of the challenge that we see is not only is there limited capital going into the asset class of startups, but more so even into these three innovation clusters, which all rely heavily on kind of deep technology or hard tech. And so oftentimes not only are they scared to invest in scalable technology companies, but even more so in something that's a little more capital intensive. And so hopefully this lowers the barrier for some of those investors to get in investing in some of these companies. So success for me would be to have this be a catalyst for investors to actually, start to dabble and invest in these companies.
Yeah, I definitely echo with that, especially trying to create that virtuous cycle of once we get enough here, then they start growing, dissolving, but then creating a bunch of companies out of it. It's exciting to see what's happening there at UC Davis and also I don't know if I'm pointing the right way in my background picture here, but the Aggie Square, along with a lot of the things happening, like with Ag started so far. We've got some, I think, pretty strong sectors in the region making a really big difference. What do you think are the strengths of kind of Sacramento when it comes to being able to support these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always speak to the community that rallies around it. I think for our region, we're really strong from idea to about the seed stage. I think one of the gaps we have is kind of serving that like next tranche from Series A and beyond. And that's just part of, not being as mature of an ecosystem. But I think we have a groundswell of just support for founders to get connected to resources and people at some of those earlier stages. And so I think it's the time to certainly explore those going forward. But I think the opportunities I foresee, which I hope the innovation grants as well as Angel Con help to fill, is some of that early stage capital and recognizing there's a lot of non-dilutive capital going out to support these ventures. And so will that incentivize some of these investors to actually put their money to work in some of these investments that have large opportunities for returns going forward?
Yeah. So I know right now you guys are working on a city grant that's an accelerator, and so are we, the Deep Dive and Traction Labs. And I think we're both kind of focusing on trying to get them to that next step of investment a little bit beyond seed. You've also worked on, like you mentioned, Angel Con, and then with the grants of us all trying to, I guess, lift up all the boats of entrepreneurs here to really make a big difference in the region. Now, my kind of next question is like, okay, so we're starting to get them up. When do you feel like we'll be able to start to see some of the more, I guess, significant investments in the region? And then what's the next step from there?
When, I think it'll be
We're not
July
gonna, don't give us an
31st,
exact, yeah.
2026. I don't, I think obviously the timing for just markets in general is in question. So
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of wait and see that we're seeing, but hopefully again, some of these things like remove some of the barriers for that. I think, when we start to have some big, we have an exit or two that's really notable related to these different innovation clusters and that they've gone through a number of the resources, I think will signal that additional like credibility that like, we're certainly delivering on. And so again, all of that just takes time, right? It's not like, hey, we, launched a startup and they're going to be successful tomorrow. Is like the path to exit is quite a ways away. And so I think being able to then tell that story of a company who, does exit and that like across that 7 to 10 years or however long it took, like these were the resources they tapped into along the way, or here were the investors or companies that they ultimately plugged into. So I
Yeah,
think,
we have some good
but
stories around that, but clearly not enough. But
yeah,
I'd say like right now is the time to, for people to take that chance, go after that grant, because like as you remarked, as you remarked, the market is kind of it's in a lull right now. There's not a whole lot happening. But if you're just starting, you're not ready for that market.
yeah,
You're ready to go engage with the Carlsen Center, go after some of these grants, and then maybe in 2 or 3 years, as what you have has matured, and the market comes back, you're in a perfect place.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, we've been talking a lot about like, the capital, both from a non-dilutive as well as like equity investment. I think one of the biggest things our region can do to support, all startups, not just even like scalable, innovation-driven startups, is actually become customers. And SMUD's a great, representation of what that looks like through their seed program. But actually, like become customers, that's the greatest sign of validation for any of these companies, and often is the risk hurdle that most of these companies are trying to get over. And so, if we could get some more of those, risk-taking corporations or companies to actually become customers, I think that would be advantageous for more investment into the asset class as well.
Yeah, some good pilot projects, and it's nice having Smud here who can do, energy pilot projects, and also with, Aggie Square and AgStart, which both have the ability to do some more demo projects to validate there and de-risk. What are some other places you think that, maybe we need to support, I guess, de-risking of technologies in Sacramento?
That's kind of one of the main, I think, is, certainly becoming, test pilot customers. And I recognize there's a cost and certain things to that. I think the other is like, how do we get better at, commercializing technology from our different institutions? So that's always been a gap. But again, that it's all connected, right? If there's not the capital to deploy into these, or there's not the customers willing to pilot on the other side, then it is hard to commercialize the technology, particularly if it is a long pathway for capital investment.
The
So,
catch 22 of everything,
so
everyone
but
wants to be the last money in, but
yeah, and I
um,
think, one of the goals of SEGA is certainly to build more of a regional, connected ecosystem. I think, as we look at all the investment that's going into innovation driven entrepreneurship and support. So, City of Sac's done a great job, same with City of Elk Grove and City of Roseville. A number of them have programs to support this. But one of the challenges, and, I'm not, I voiced this to them, so this isn't something new, but is funding programs that are specific to a municipality is really challenging to serve entrepreneurship when they don't really see borders. They're like, I'm just trying to build my startup. I don't really give a crap where I'm
mhm.
located. At this point, I just want to, get the resources I need. And so really building that regional identity around entrepreneurship and not having this is a city of Davis or a city of Sacramento company. They're a greater Sacramento startup, and how do we all rally around them to ultimately get them to grow and scale?
You know, what so there's a lot of people kind of, I guess, doing, the CalOSBA innovation grants right now. And I like that, entrepreneurs don't see borders. And one thing I think that highlights, at least our region's belief in that is that we do collaborate with a lot of outside regions. If you go up to Chico, you can see Cameron at Grow Tech Fest up there, and Eva Shepherd of Chico Start down here at GFX last year and other events. What's your kind of sense about how Cal OSBA feels about all this? Are they excited? Are they potentially looking at extending them in 2026 or?
Yeah. So again, this is they have the funds allocated. It's just each hub is running them differently. So some want to just allocate them all straight away. Some want to, tier them over certain times. And so, part of it is in conversation with them, they recognize that each of our ecosystems are at different stages. And so, we're certainly an emerging ecosystem. And so I think there's that continual development. And so part of this is like having this be a learning process as well. And so sharing, our successes of it, as well as how we're going to do things different from program year to program year going forward. So, but, I look forward to seeing this kind of first round and what that ultimately leads to.
All right, I'm going to turn it over if there's anyone out there that has any questions for Cameron. Anyone thinking about applying?
No,
Well, I know we
as
definitely.
you're coming up with your questions, I'll grab the link here.
Hey, Thomas, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Ooh, you're giving the mic to Brian.
There we go.
Cameron, great presentation. Just wondering what your thoughts on, there's a number of entities out there, Carlsen Center, UC Davis, Big Bang, Sacramento Entrepreneurial Academy, others that are trying to build kind of the startup community.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also, a number of private equity firms in town that are trying to build kind of a later stage private enterprises. Any thoughts on what we can do as a community to bring everyone together? So we're not being siloed and all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, no, I like it. I think oftentimes like some of that early stage stuff, like the private equity seems so far away, even though like maybe you might want to start those conversations earlier rather than later. And so I don't know if it like an event or something, but I think some of that, you plug in as a mentor and things of that nature, which certainly build that connection and offer that insight. But I think, one of the things just from our conversation the other day was like, I think after that, like seed series A, like oftentimes the support goes more into an invisible, like advisory, like it's a different type of network where there's like it's less programmatic. It's more like tapping into different people. And so maybe it's bringing to life some of those networks that are supporting them from that series A to like you all in the private equity space. And so I don't know if there's like, I don't know what that event or type of program opportunity looks like, but I think probably providing more visibility of what is actually going on for those companies. So maybe those that have gone, from Series A beyond, like what did they do and what did they tap into, or what type of support would they need?
Yeah, I guess the genesis of my question was even earlier on the startup stage with what you're doing at Carlsen Center, this whole SEGA program, which is great. But there's also stuff happening at UC Davis, there's stuff happening with the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Academy. And sometimes it seems like we have all these different groups working kind of in a vacuum. And wouldn't it be great if there's a way to get, and I don't know what it looks like, I just want to get your thoughts, if there's a way to get all these groups working together.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to have like, I guess, more conversations through the alliance of like what those things look like. Has there been like a streamlined program? Not so much. I don't know if a program is the right term, but I think hopefully this can be like a filtering in of some of those opportunities and having, for each of maybe these clusters, having more of a regional review of, hey, we have people from UC Davis up to Sierra College. Those are more obviously institutions, but you have partners associated with them that are like truly, making that happen. I think, it's probably also about telling the story. I think those things are actually happening. So, one of the teams that won the energy and sustainability, Splash Tech. They've gone through Carlsen Center programs. They've gone through Plasma. They've, won Big Bang. They've won things at the Carlsen Center. And so it's like, those are like regional teams, and we probably could be better about demonstrating how we've all collaborated for those types of successes versus it being like, I think sometimes we compete against each other versus, demonstrating that this is truly a regional startup and a success for all of us. But, probably some of that comes from the scarcity mindset of funding, and like, oh, I want that sponsor or whatnot. And so I want to take the successor credit, I would say, I guess.
And Cameron, if I might jump in, CleanStart was founded after a study by SMUD and the CEC that said, what entrepreneurs really needed was a place to kind of go hang out, meet, and collaborate. And I think SEGA that Cameron shared is actually a good one there, because you get the venture catalyst from UC Davis that's there, Big Bang that's there, SEA is showing up now. And, you're getting a place where entrepreneurs, or at least organizations, come together. And then, at the clean tech power ups, or even more so at StartupSacs, and I think the Carlsen Center is part of it too, the happy hours, you get a lot of entrepreneurs and people networking there. Or if you can go to the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, where you can go and check out a lot of the resources that are available there. So it's there is a lot of collaboration sometimes, and a lot of talk, or there's a lot of talking and a lot of collaborations, but it might seem fractured, but there's a surprising amount of collaboration, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I got a request to repeat the dates of the different sessions.
Yep. I'll pull up a slide, and as I'm doing so, one of the things I think that's a challenge for some of the ecosystem building work is there's no one, and not that you want any one particular person in charge of the ecosystem, because that's not like how ecosystems work. But one of the challenges is all of us also run programs. And so it's like the coordination that often I try to do is in addition to like 10 programs. And so you're trying to like build the ecosystem and support network for the connectivity and coordination, but you don't actually have always the capacity, because it was like, I'm running the Traction Lab, Angel Con, innovation grants, all these things. And so like, there's no one person like that's dedicated full time to like making these connections and infrastructure happen. And that would be my biggest goal, was how do we like expand that and have investment from our city and region to say, we have to a degree someone or an organization accountable for here's what innovation driven entrepreneurship looks like in our region, and they're that kind of connective tissue for it. So that would be my pitch. So I'm gonna pull this up here.
All right. And with that, I think we're about at the point where we'll be wrapping it up. I'm going to share let people take one last.
Yep. So just I'll highlight the deadline is August 1st. And so that will be for each of the innovation grants, as well as the Angel Con will be, I believe, August 1st as well. And then from there, we'll have a review in that early time, and we'll let you know that then the investment readiness. So if you're one of those 8 to 12 in your cluster, it'll be from September 3rd through August 4th, and that'll run from Wednesdays 3 to 5. So feel free to, put a tentative hold. And then from there, we'll identify a date in early October. So likely that second week to select the finalists, and then we'll have a pitch day, which will give you those formal dates once we have those locked in. But that's kind of what the flow and dates thus far look like.
All right. And with that, I want to thank Cameron for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure to hear what you're working on and see how the ecosystem's growing. I also want to thank our supporters, that's SMUD, Chico Start, Fresno State, Witten Law, Moss Adams, and River City Bank, all of them supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem and clean tech growth in the Sacramento region. And I will encourage people to join our next perspectives on a startup that's rewriting the rules of power conversion with Edson Perez. Register day. That's on May. That's next week. And then we have some upcoming events. Strategizer Live with David Bland and a clean tech meetup on June 26th on alternative battery chemistry, which is coming along right now. And we're seeing a lot more startups take advantage of it. One of them being Greg Conley's Core Power too. So with that, thank you for attending. You can connect with us on all these avenues. That last one, there's the website, and the one right before that, that little drip with plug flower in it, is Empower Innovation Network, which is a clean tech LinkedIn sort of space. With that, thank you very much.